Alrighty, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, November 16th, 2023. And what do you know? The high of yesterday was our scaffolding level. I think we were off by about 4 or 5 ticks. We go back there. And then the low of the day and the low of the overnight session here, we're holding our scaffolding once again. I mean, it's just day in, day out, right? I feel like every time I do our pre-market, we're finding another major high and low off of our scaffolding or one of our roadmap levels. So anyway, let's go ahead and review what happened here yesterday. So yesterday we talked about there being, with our 1 hour bearish signal from the highs, we were expecting there to potentially be a pullback. If we go to our sheet here and look at some of the stuff we were talking about on yesterday's pre-market, basically we said, obviously, we're in a strong market. Don't say we didn't warn you, right? We've been talking about this breakout for potential huge bullish push for ever since it began, right? So we've been warning you about this. You should have been able to get on this bullish side of things ever since then. Be aware, there's a nice 1 hour bearish signal from the overnight high. This, in addition to the extrapolated 4 hour bearish signal, may mean we have a pullback coming into the open, right? First sign for a larger pullback is going to be a push down below VWAP, PDC, and 50 PD. If bulls can keep price above these areas and above the overnight high, then we have some targets up above, okay? So pretty straightforward. We expected there to be a pullback given the hourly and 4 hours bearish signals from the highs. We also talked about seeing a potential bearish daily signal yesterday as well, right? So we kind of had a couple potentials and that hourly. And what ended up happening is we did end up pushing to a lower low that day, but didn't really go anywhere. So yesterday was pretty choppy. We covered this on our weekly webinar last night. We looked at my short off VWAP. We looked at my attempt to short the 200 as we started to rally lower. We looked at my long somewhere over here. It was very messy, and I tried to get a couple more trades on because the topic or the discussion for our webinar yesterday was, my specific trade entries and my thought process behind why I would take those entries. So if you missed the weekly webinar, we'll have the link out to our members here by the end of today. So definitely check that out. So let's take a look. I mean, out of the open, you did have an opportunity to buy VWAP. Just if you were looking to play the bullish side of things, you would have caught the first pop out. Only would have gave you 5 points, right? Another parry right off VWAP and the scaffolding again would probably give you that 5 points. And then we started to fail, and this is where I got short. Was able to ride this down. Didn't get to my further targets, and then we bounced. And again, nothing super sexy here, but they did start to rally out and hold the FMA. This is where I got in long. They came back to the 200, our textbook pullback. That actually would have been a great trade, but I was not at the screen there. 38 retrace, 200 moving average. The previous resistance from the opening of the session, not a bad area to try there, especially because we were breaking out up through VWAP. We had crossovers of our moving averages, everything lining up there to try a long, especially because we were breaking the high of the morning, right? Got a higher high, got our pullback, got our test of the 200 with 1 or 2 ticks of heat, and then we got this little bounce. And like I said, didn't quite go anywhere, wasn't anything super sexy, but a great opportunity there to grab a little bit. And then again, it went a little bit sideways. This, I told you guys yesterday in our webinar, probably would have been the sexiest thing you could have done, was to short the back end of VWAP here as price was failing. So remember, we had that bearish bias given the 4 hour, the hourly bearish stuff from the highs before the market opened. We got an attempt to break out to the upside, and then everything started to fall. The floor drop, came out. Everything started to fall out. We broke back down through VWAP. We had our crossovers back to the bearish orientation here, and that's actually technically the crossover right there. And then you had your opportunity to go ahead and get short off the 38 retrace of that leg down, which was exactly the scaffolding, the VWAP, and we even had divergence up there as well. So pretty much every checkbox was there, and you would have captured this sell-off down to the close of the day before, right? And that was basically the low of yesterday, was the close of the day before. They did peek into it here by 3 points and then pop it back up to close out the day here. I guess close out right around the same area. So it was pretty choppy. You did have great opportunities in the morning here with pretty much no risk to get short, to get long, to get short, right? And then again, it just kind of went sideways. What can I say? But we did push to a lower low for the day. And we did basically respect VWAP to the upside and VWAP to the downside on nearly every test here, outside of here where you had to accept 3-4 points of risk in order to capture the sell-off at the end of the day. And then at the end of the day, you see, you even had another perfect, nearly zero risk opportunity to get short as we were rejecting, even almost have like a head and shoulders pattern right there on a very short time frame. And then, you know, test, look at all these shoulders, and then bam, we fail back. There's your crossover. You could have tried the back end of the 200. Again, that was a nice, beautiful 50% retrace of that leg right to the 200, divergence, and you would have captured that sell-off right into the extended hours of the Globex session last night. So that brings us here to our pre-market here, like I said. Now, if you zoom out and look, the high of yesterday was 1.5 points away from our scaffolding. So yesterday's high, it was in the pre-market, was literally a point and a quarter away from our scaffolding up top. And then the low, once we sold off and came into our overnight session, was the scaffolding. Okay, and now we're getting some of the largest bounces that we've gotten since the sell-off here, right off of our scaffolding. So I think this is just incredible stuff. Let's go ahead and jump up to our higher time frame so we can do our pre-market for this morning. We are still basically trading right inside of yesterday's choppiness up here. If we pull up, let me see if I can grab my 60-minute chart. Just to give you guys kind of the perspective, I mean, there's our next target to the upside, right? There's the push to 1.5 points in front of it, the failure, and then the pullback to bounce right off our scaffolding again. And if you look, I mean, and I do this nearly every day, I mean, you look back and it's literally like come up into scaffoldings, right? And then trouble, and then we break out. Now, when you have a strong impulsive move, it's not going to just pull back off levels, right? It's just going to rip it higher. So we get this rip higher, and where do we come up to and peter out? The next scaffolding here for quite a while, and then finally it breaks out, comes to the next one, comes down to find support off the one below it. I mean, I've never seen anything as good as these levels, and I'm honestly, I create these levels, and I still don't even understand how they end up becoming such an accurate representation of the major rotations in the market, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we do know that these major scaffolding areas are typically where we see these rotations, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and do our pre-market for this morning.